Today is the fourth Sunday we are looking at the stories about knowing Jesus in a new way. Today we'll be knowing Jesus in the morning. On the first Easter morning, 3 women went to the tomb of Jesus so that they could finish burying him. And when they got there, they found that the door was open. And they looked inside, and all they could see was the white cloth that Jesus had been wrapped in. But Jesus was not there. An angel dressed in white said to them, "Why are you looking for him here? He is not here. He is gone ahead to Galilee. You will find him there." And 2 of the women ran back to tell the others where Jesus was and that they had found the tomb empty. Mary Magdalene stayed, and she wept at the tomb. Peter and John decided to come and look at the tomb. John got there first, but he waited for Peter, and when they went inside, they saw the white cloth that Jesus had been buried in. But they did not see him, but somehow they felt him there. And they went back to tell the others. Mary stayed at the tomb, and a stranger came up to her and said, "Why are you weeping?" She thought it was a gardener, and she said, "Just tell me where Jesus is, so that I may take his body and finish burying him." He said to her, "Mary," and she knew it was the Lord. And he said, "Go tell the others to meet me in Galilee. I will see them there." That same evening, 2 of Jesus' disciples were going home to Emmaus, which is about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking to each other about the things that had happened in Jerusalem that weekend. The crucifixion, the empty tomb, and they wondered about it. A stranger joined them on their journey and asked what they were talking about, and they told him. And he said, "Oh, how foolish you are. Don't you remember in the scriptures all the wonderful things that God did to save us from the traps that we were in?" And he told them all kinds of things from the scriptures, and he opened their minds. He was going to go on when they got to their house, but they said, "No, stay and have a meal with us." And when they had their meal, he picked up the bread and blessed it and broke it. And he picked up the cup of wine and blessed that and gave it to them too. And they knew that it was Jesus. And then he disappeared. On that same night, the disciples were gathered in the upper room, and they had the doors closed because they were afraid. And Jesus appeared to them there and said, "Peace be with you." And he let them see his hands and his side and the wounds that were there. Thomas was not with them that night. But when he saw them the next day, they told him that they had seen Jesus. He said, "Unless I see his hands and touch his wounds, I will not believe." The next time that they were gathered together, Thomas was with them, and Jesus appeared again, even though the doors were closed. And he went right to Thomas and said, "Here, touch my hand, touch my wound, and see and believe." And Thomas just fell to his knees and said, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus said, "Because you have seen, you believe. But blessed are those who have not seen and still believe." Jesus told the disciples to go ahead to Galilee. So they set off for Galilee from Jerusalem. It's a journey of about 80 miles. It took them 4 days to walk it. When they got there, they went to the Sea of Galilee, because many of them were fishermen. And they remembered when they were boys that they went fishing there with their fathers. And it was like being home again. Peter jumped up and said, "I'm going fishing." And the others stood up and helped him get the boat ready. When it was ready, they pushed it off into the lake and they went fishing. They fished all day and all night long. And then, as dawn was coming and the sky grew pink, and then it grew bright blue, they looked to the shore, and on the shoreline they could see someone next to a charcoal fire, which was glowing red with a little bit of smoke coming from it. The person called out and said, "Do you have any fish?" And they said, "No." "Well then, take your nets and throw them on the other side of the boat." So they did. And as they held those nets, they could feel the fish moving inside of them. John was not looking at the fish or at the nets. He was looking at the person on the shore. And he nudged Peter and said, "It is the Lord." And Peter stood up and jumped in the water and swam to the shore. And he waded into the shore when he got there. The other disciples were pulling the full nets behind the boat. They could not even get them into the boat. And they got to the shore, dragging that net behind them. And the person said to them, "Bring me some fish." And they looked up and they knew it was Jesus. And Jesus had bread for them, and he had fish for them that was cooked on that charcoal fire. And they talked and they sat together. At one point, Jesus said to Peter, "Do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes, I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." A little later, he said to Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter said, "Of course I do. Tend my sheep." Once more Jesus said, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my sheep." And then Jesus started talking to Peter about what would happen when he got old, and how sometimes people would tell him to do things that he didn't want to do. And later on, the disciples remembered that conversation, and they thought that maybe Jesus was telling Peter something about the way that Peter would die. In a little while, Jesus looked at Peter and said, "Follow me." And Peter got up and went for a walk with Jesus. And John followed along a little ways. And Peter said, "Lord, what about him?" And Jesus said, "It's not for you to know what will happen with him." Now, I wonder if there's anything that you can think of, either in this room or at home, that might help to tell this story. That might help to remind us about parts of it. This is what I thought of. You might think of something very different, and that's good. That's okay. I wonder too if anyone in your family has come close to this story. I wonder if they could tell a story about a time that reminds them about this story. We are all part of the family that belongs to this story.